A warm welcome also on my behalf to our third seminar, Hydropower, the wrong track when it comes to climate protection and development politics. So Ramona already said a couple of things about this seminar. It's the third part of our online series. It's about water bodies and water conservation. The first seminar was about agricultural politics. The second seminar was about water bodies in cities. And today we want to talk about hydropower. There will be a next seminar on March 18th, where we will summarize everything that we've talked about during the last seminars and also address political decision makers and the German Bundestag, and also speak to international guests and experts on this topic. Today we have 4 parts. The first part is about megadams in Latin America. The second part is about small-scale hydropower plants. The focus will be on the Balkan countries and the river Viosa. The third part is about European policies when it comes to water conservation and opportunities of dam restorations. And the last and fourth part is about hydropower in Germany. What's the status quo? What are the political discussions concerning dams in Germany about? And we will also take a look at 2 short videos today. Or we want to start today with the video. It's a documentary, a small documentary by Martin Kessler. It's about the river Xingu. And yeah, we want to start the seminar by watching this video.
Bendito é o fruto do vosso ventre, Jesus.
Santa Maria, Mãe de Deus, rogai por nós pecadores, agora e na hora de nossa morte. Amém.
Wir werden nicht nachgeben. Wenn die den Konflikt wollen, werden wir zurückschlagen.
We will resist. If they want to have this conflict, they can have it.
Wir kommen zu der Bewertung, dass die Vorteile die Nachteile ganz klar überwiegen.
There are more advantages than disadvantages.
Es geht stets darum, am meisten zu profitieren.
It's always about making profit.
Ich würde lieber bleiben, doch das steht nicht in
I
meiner Macht.
prefer to stay, but it's not up to me to decide about this.
Wir waren 11 Geschwister.
We
Unser
were
Vater
11 siblings. Our father raised us here without any problems because nature provided everything that we needed. But nowadays, there's not enough to survive.
Sie haben alles zerstört.
They destroyed everything. Everything was full of trees here, but they barked the trees and they destroyed everything.
Der neue Präsident erklärt, sobald ich an der Macht bin, könnt ihr in indigenes Land eindringen. Wir müssen unser indigenes Land verteidigen. Der Wald stirbt immer mehr ab, die Flüsse sterben. Alles, was es an Reichtümern im Wald gibt, geht so zugrunde.
Everything is being destroyed.
Wir brauchen eine fundamentale Umkehr, einen anderen
We
Lebensstil.
need a change of attitude. We need a new mindset in order to survive, so that all of us can survive and not only a few. May God bless you. Continue the work that you're doing. So this movement with the 16-year-old activist is such a strong movement, and it's really important. And if this movement and the Catholic Church and science and research team up, I think something big can happen. And we can guide the policy makers. So we're on the right track. And we have to decide right now, do we commit to working for a better future or not?
Sí. Lo que no se dice, ¿no? En la prensa. Sí. No hay información, o sea, no se quiere dar.
Ja, da haben wir einen Eindruck bekommen von dem,
So, I hope you got an insight into what will happen if more megadams are built. I'm sorry? Can you still hear me? Yeah, we can hear you. Okay, I'm sorry for the interruption. So if you want to take a look at the trailer again, I've posted it in the chat. And it's also possible to organize events where you can show the whole movie if you want to. So I've also posted the contact information of the people who did the movie, so you can connect if you want to. So Erwin Kreutler, the Bishop Emeritus, was also invited to the seminar today. Unfortunately, he is not able to be present today. However, he sent us some welcoming or opening remarks, and Sebastian Schönauer, my colleague and also chairman of the Bund Association, will present these opening remarks of Bishop Kreutler to us right now. Welcome to everyone also on my behalf. Thank you for the opportunity to present these opening remarks by Bishop Kreutler to you. So when we prepared this seminar, we decided, or we said that Bishop Kreutler was a very important person when it comes to water conservation and development policies. So we tried to contact him, and it wasn't that easy to actually reach out to him. However, after a few months, we were able to talk to him. And then I spoke to him and invited him to the seminar, and he was very delighted. However, he told us that he had an accident and that he couldn't join us today. He stuck to his bed the whole day and is not able to stand up or walk. He told me that the political situation was rather tense And he also told me that he wasn't able to speak to us live today. However, he left me an opening remark, and I want to present these remarks to you right now. So he is Dom, Bishop Emeritus of the Prelature of Xingu, and he had been given this title, Dom, by his fellow citizens. He said that hydropower has always played an important role for many decades in his life. From 1981 to 2015, he served as bishop in Brazil's largest diocese, and he always openly spoke out against the construction of the Belo Monte Dam. Although the Brazilian government and the managers of the World Bank always promoted this dam as a very good investment for the industrial development. And he also did so, he raised his voice against the construction, although the Brazilian media, who always referred to the G20 states, although the media was proclaiming that the construction of the hydroelectric power plant would be very beneficial for the electrification of Brazil. So the bishop pointed out that large areas of rainforest would be destroyed in the process. He pointed out that important carbon sinks and the rivers of the landscapes would be destroyed. And he also said that hydroelectric power plants were by no means climate neutral, but rather a source of greenhouse gases. So from the beginning, he mentioned that it would not be beneficial for the economic development because the high investment costs would increase the risk of becoming over-indebted. He always said that we should rather invest in education, universities, and schools. He said that it did require a lot of courage to speak out, and that this was only possible because he was very convinced of his message, and he is still convinced up to this day. We have to stand up for creation and against the destruction of the planet. We have to stand up for justice and against the exploitation of people and nature. He told me that he was always deeply convinced and that he always stood in solidarity with the indigenous population because many of them were deprived of their rights. He also opposed the planned Belo Monte hydroelectric power plant. Although this hydroelectric power plant was supposed to also supply electricity for his residents in Altamira. So a lot of his comrades stepped up. They faced harassment and interrogations, but he still continued to show solidarity with everyone. He said that it requires a lot of courage and trust in God to speak out continuously against the construction of these dams. He highlighted again that these dams and plans don't benefit the population, but mostly only the investors. He told me that he was very glad that the youth are standing up right now and are organizing themselves, for example, in Fridays for Future, to stop the destruction of our planet. For decades, he and other Brazilian bishops had been raising awareness against the slash and burn agriculture and environmental pollution. But unfortunately, he said, they never really received any response. So, when the Brazilian head of state, Jair Bolsonaro, who has been in office since 2019, declared that he wanted to open up Amazonia to multinational mining and timber companies, was like a stab in the heart for the bishop. He said, it's a matter of life and death. We can't accept his plans because he's only interested in helping multinationals. He's guided by economic interest, and this would endanger the future of Amazonia and the whole continent. Bishop Kreutler said, they are coming to extract gold and other resources, and they will leave us Brazilians with a poisoned environment. They don't give a damn about the consequences. This is also something he mentioned during an interview with the newspaper Tiroler Tageszeitung. He continued, "Thank God, thousands of students and countless NGOs all over the world were speaking out against it, and the churches are also fighting together with them." Kreutler says that the church must engage in the struggle of protecting the environment. He says that the church can convey to people that they also have to stand up for the planet and protect what God has given them. So, last thing he said, that he wants, or that he welcomes the plan of ordaining women as deacons. So Kreutler, who is also the co-author of the encyclical Laudato Si, says that it is very important that the Catholic Church emancipates, and he firmly believes that this will have a positive effect on Brazilian politics and society. And last but not least, he told me the following: please prevent the Mercosur agreement. This agreement would offer international investors a gateway for further investments in the timber industry, and it would lead to further clearing of pristine forests for even more soya cultivation. Brazil needs the German conservation and environmental movement. Thank you. Thank you, Sebastian, for presenting Bishop Kreutler's opening remarks to us. Now we have the opportunity to talk to Lydia Anti from Bolivia. She's from the Committee for the Defense of Life in Amazonia. Welcome.
Damit ist das Leben der Menschen gemeint, aber auch das Leben
This relates to life of people, but also life of nature, life of the environment. So please, Lydia, we're looking forward to your presentation.
Lydia?
Hello to everyone from Guayamarin in Bolivia. I'm a member of the Organization for the Protection of the Amazonian Woman, and I'm a member of the Committee for the Protection of Life in the Amazon. We defend the life of people and forests. Today, I want to talk about the complex of hydropower in Madeira. Can we go back to the last slide because it was too fast? Thank you. So today we want to talk about the hydropower plant complex in Madeira. This includes 4 plants, Guayamarin and Cachoeira Esperança in Bolivia, and in Brazil we have Jirau and San Antonio, which are already built. The others are planned. Next slide, please. So this complex forms a part of the infrastructure program IREM IRISA, which is being conducted by COSIPLAN. What is this about? It's about the fact that projects like these are planned all over the Southern American continent. When it comes to Cachoeira Esperança, the hydropower plant in Jirau is supposed to, or is projected to be built in the same way. Next slide. This is about Many researchers say that this project, Cachoeira Esperança, cannot really be put into practice in a good way. Cachoeira Esperança is near Guayamarine, and large stretches of forests will be flooded. Indigenous communities will be affected. The same holds true for many aquatic species. Next slide. In 2014, there was a flood catastrophe, which was caused by the power plant in Jirau. Just one moment. So the pictures you can see here were taken during the flood in 2014. There were downpours due to the El Niño phenomenon, and there was a backlog effect at the hydropower plant in Jirau, which affected the kind of areas in Brazil. So for months, people had to take shelters because houses and roads were inaccessible. Next slide. These are the consequences of this flood. Here you can see how the flood in 2014 in Guayamarine caused floods that, with water levels that reached all the way to the top of, to the rooftops. And this was due to the hydropower plant in Jirau. Next slide. At the moment, a feasibility study is being conducted for the hydropower plants planned in Bolivia. The study started in 2009. It was supposed to be concluded in 2019, but due to the pandemic, this was not possible. Sorry, in 2020, it was supposed to be concluded. These projects are supposed to create new locations for trees. Locations for the construction of these power plants are supposed to be identified, but we don't want this. We have enough power plants. We already have enough problems to deal with from the Jirau power plant. And these studies don't take into account what kind of ramifications the dams have for the rural populations of the area. Next slide, please. This is a picture of Jirau. It's at roughly 30 kilometers from Cachoeira Esperança. So this hydropower plant has already been built. And since it was built, we have felt major ramifications in Brazil as well as in Bolivia, which is why we cooperate with organizations in Brazil. Many fish species disappeared entirely, and others have been decimated due to the fact that they can't pass this hydropower plant. We are talking migratory fish species, which have a major significance for the local population. Also, the water quality deteriorated because in the reservoirs of these dams, organic material is decomposing, thus putrefying and deteriorating water quality. Next slide. Let's talk about economic consequences. We are facing the reduction of income from fishing, which has an impact on the entire region. This makes fisheries go bankrupt, but also agricultural land, arable land is lost, and pasture land is lost. There's also a major sociocultural impact. Families are disintegrated because there's an exodus, a rural exodus. In addition, due to the migration of construction workers, diseases are brought into the region. There's an increase in prostitution, drug trafficking, and crime. All of these phenomena have been encountered in Brazil already due to the effects of the hydropower plant industry. Next slide. These are the fish species that occur in our region. Studies show that due to the construction of these dams, $40 million could be lost in income. These fish species are large fish, as you can see. They are unable to pass these dam plants, these dam facilities, so they will be unable to reproduce if the development continues. Next slide. Let's be clear about the impact of these power plants. It is foremost negative. These are clearly consequences of the dams, which some operators of these dams contest or deny. This is a picture of the river dolphins that occur in this region of the Amazon. Due to the Jirau and San Antonio power plants, the dolphin populations in the river have been separated. So they will definitely become extinct in this part of the river between Jirau and San Antonio due to the fact that they are herd animals, and the same phenomenon might repeat itself elsewhere. Last slide. I just want to reiterate what Erwin Kreutler said earlier. These negative impacts of Jirau and San Antonio affect us. We live through them, and this is why we are convinced that we need to fight against the realization of the new facilities. These power plants will destroy everything that Amazonia is about and that Amazonian life is about. It would also have an impact on the entire life of the continent and the planet. Thank you very much for your attention. Are you finished? Thank you very much for the invitation to this event. This is not the only problem. Power plants, hydropower plants are not the only problem, but it's the largest problem we're facing. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to make Europeans aware of this problem, because German companies are involved as well. I would be interested in knowing what kind of activities or campaigns are being planned by the Committee for the Protection of Amazonian Life, which we might be able to accompany or support. We are planning to create alliances with other anti-dam movements in order to have synergy effects to work together. Other hydropower plants are in planning in Brazil, and we want to deal with those as well. We are trying to establish a connection to the movements in Brazil, because these are binational projects after all, on both sides of the border. In Guajamarin, this is the neighboring town of Guajamarin in Brazil. There are people we cooperate with, and the same holds true for the local state that is affected in Brazil. Guajamarin is a small town after all, so what we're trying is taking this to larger cities. So there's activities these are activities fighting for nature conservation, for women's rights. This can be dangerous in parts of Latin America, so maybe you can say something about that. That's true. It's dangerous for us. But these are our rights, and we want to advocate for them. This is why we do what we're doing. This is why we are trying to protect life in order to preserve it for our children and our grandchildren and for generations to come. Thank you very much, and see you soon. Thank you for your presentation. It was great to hear directly from you in Bolivia, to hear a voice from Bolivia. We have more than 100 participants present at this meeting who have been able to hear all this. Thank you so much. Now we have a short statement by Thilo Papacek, because it was mentioned that it's not so easy, that it can be dangerous to advocate for the rights of rivers and people who live in the region. Thilo, could you mention what this is about? We need to postpone this because Thilo is an interpreter. Okay, let's postpone. So let's move over to the second part of this seminar. It's Rivers at the Balkans. Tobias, are you ready to show the movie Viosa Forever? So this is the film.
The Viosa in Albania is the last wild river in Europe, and there really is nothing like it. The river and its tributaries flow freely from the mountains in Greece to the Adriatic coast in Albania without any artificial obstacles. Though for years, the entire river system has been under attack by dam projects, which, if constructed, would destroy this natural environment, flooding some parts of the valley while leaving others dry. But local activists and groups from around the world have stood up and have continued to fight against the dam projects. Through both protest and legal action, we have successfully halted 2 major dam projects, but the Viosa is not safe yet. It still takes just 1 dam to lose the entire river.
This tells us that we have to do something. And for the Viosa, we are aiming to protect it and to declare it a national park, which would be the first wild river national park in Europe.
Qeveria është duke punuar për t'i dhënë formë një projekti madh kombëtar që është transformimi I gjithë luginës Viosës në një park kombëtar.
Albanian political leaders have announced the intent to stop the dam projects and to establish a national park instead. But until now, these promises are empty words. Some politicians still want to keep the door open for the dam projects after the election, which puts the Viosa in real danger. And that is why we must speak up for the Viosa National Park now.
And what is exceptional here is that you have this unspoiled wilderness area. You have that whole range of ecosystems, multiple different habitat types. All the way from the source to the sea. This is clearly a unique and exceptional area in Europe and should be recognized as such.
It's an enormous mosaic of different and small habitats.
There are people that have been living in the Viosa Valley for thousands of years. It's an emotional relation between people. People have named their baby girls by Viosa. They sing about the river.
Wherever the river wants to go, it goes. There is nothing comparable in Europe like this.
In this particular case, we're looking to protect not just the upland areas, but also the whole river ecosystem, the watershed, the tributaries, and especially the floodplains. In some cases, those gravel beds are going 2 kilometers across. I mean, these are spectacular places.
Lumenti janë korridor për emigrimin e llojeve. Kështu që duke ndërprer lumin me një digë, ky korridor nuk është më. Me habitate, me lloje, me gjitha këto vlera humbasin.
According to an opinion poll that was conducted in December, 94% of the Albanian people are in favor of a national park. So this is the will of a majority of people that also should be heard. I've been working 6 years in this fight, in this campaign, and we never give up.
This is a rare opportunity to really protect one of the last wild big rivers. This would be an asset for Europe, but also a contribution to global conservation efforts.
Imagine such a national park on such a dimension, the whole river system. We must use the coming election to make substantial steps towards Europe's first wild river national park.
Kështu që kjo është ajo që ne kërkojmë me forcë, të paktën nga gjithë kjo që ne po e shfrytëzojmë natyrën, pra të kursejmë një lumë.
And this is your opportunity to enter in history. that you have protected this wild river, you have protected this last pristine river, and you have turned it into the queen.
Ja, das ist ein Aufruf, die
So this is really a call to support the movement that wants to make the Viosa a national park. And we want to talk about the wild, pristine rivers in the Balkans a bit more. Welcome Pippa Gallup from Bankwood. She will speak to us about the situation in the West Balkan countries. It's especially about small-scale hydropower plants. A lot of them are planned. Pippa, welcome, and you're welcome to start your presentation right now.
Throughout the whole region, which really need protection. But also such rivers unfortunately look very attractive to hydropower engineers and politicians. The problem of hydropower is not new. There are already quite a lot of hydropower built in the, if you can just go back to the first one. The problem of hydropower is not so new. Traditionally, the countries in the region rely on a mixture of coal power and hydropower. These were really the only two energy sources until recently. And what we are seeing now is that since the early 2000s, there is a wave of hydropower construction across the region again. But the problem is especially bad in the countries which are not yet in the EU, meaning Albania, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Kosovo, Montenegro, North Macedonia, and Serbia. It was really in Bulgaria where this trend of building very small hydropower plants started to go. Now we can go to the next slide, thanks. It was in the late 1990s that someone in Bulgaria identified this trend that was already taking place in some other European countries, using feed-in tariff subsidies to stimulate renewable energy generation. And in fact, at that time, solar and wind were still quite expensive. They were also not something that the local companies knew how to do. And so hydropower was the main thing that the politicians started to push. Albania and Bosnia-Herzegovina were next. They started to issue a lot of concessions already in 2006. And the other countries have started to catch up with them after that. In fact, for many years, not so much happened. The companies got the concessions and then they traded them, they speculated that later these might be something valuable. But in the beginning, they didn't build very much. But after the feed-in tariff system was introduced, all of these very small plants suddenly became profitable and the construction started to speed up dramatically. So we, as far as we have been able to find out, by 2018, 488 new small plants had been built in the Western Balkans since 2009. So there were some small plants that were already there, but there was this new wave of nearly 500 plants. And what you could see on these pictures, maybe we can just go back one slide. What you can see is that although these are really very small dams, when I say small hydropower, all of them are under 10 megawatts and most of them are even under 1 megawatt. But we have this kind of impacts that we call death by 1,000 cuts. The ones on the picture you can see here are from the Josenic-Banja area of Serbia. And in this area, there are at least 15 of these plants. So every 2 or 3 kilometers on every river, there is one of these plants. There is a small reservoir, a water intake, and a pipe, which then takes the water downstream to the powerhouse. And in between this area where the water is collected and the powerhouse, the rivers usually run either with very little water or completely dry. So this is what you can see on the left-hand side, that even this picture was taken in winter. You can see that the river is really nearly dry. There is no room for any fish to survive there. And in the right-hand side, you can see also, even in the cases where they build these so-called fish passes, the operators often block them with boards, or even we saw one welded together with a metal board, so that all the water will go to the powerhouse to generate electricity, and not to actually allow this fish pass to operate. So, I mean, the topic for today is about climate and mitigation, but in fact, this whole trend is rather an example of lack of rule of law, lack of government accountability. There is really no positive impact on climate mitigation. A couple of years ago, we did some research because we understood that the renewable energy incentives, these feed-in tariffs, that they are driving this trend. And we calculated that these small hydropower plants, they receive 70% of the incentives, but they, across the Western Balkan countries, only generate 3.6% of the electricity. Ramona, can you go to the next one? Thanks. Here you can see a couple more examples. Again, with the completely dry riverbed at this Brajina plant in Macedonia. And on the right-hand side, it's a bit small, but there was supposed to be on the right-hand side a fish pass, but it's like a meter in the air. So, I mean, there is no way any fish is going to get up there. And the problem with these small plants is that really there is no control, no monitoring, no way to even enforce the law on such plants. They are in remote mountain areas. They are very dispersed, hardly accessible in some cases, and the environmental inspectorates are never going to go and check if they are working in line with the legislation. The good news is that people are really fighting hard to stop this trend. In fact, there is much wider resistance to hydropower than, for example, to coal, which in my organization, Bankwatch, we are also trying hard to stop the use of coal in the region. But the small hydropower plants get much more resistance because they are really intruding into very small villages where no one is used to having this kind of big infrastructure built, especially without their permission. Next slide, please. A couple of examples of resistance it's happening across the region. But one particularly famous example was in Kruščica in Bosnia-Herzegovina, where a group, mainly women, they noticed that the works were starting on a hydropower plant which would endanger the zone where their drinking water was coming from. And they managed to stop the work in spite of being attacked by the police. And after that, they set up a rota and they kept watch for more than a year. And finally, they managed to stop this plant being built. And on the right, there is an example from Serbia, where in the Stara Planina region, there has been a very, very big fight. This area on the Rakitska River is also near that area. They have been fighting through all kind of legal means, through protests, but ultimately this Zvonce plant was built. However, there was a court ruling saying that the pipes have to be removed from the riverbed because it was not built in line with the law. But the investor didn't do anything. And so the people there actually last summer, they tried with their own hands, with different tools, they actually tried to destroy the pipes themselves. They managed to make some holes, but of course, it's quite difficult work. And so they didn't manage to completely destroy it, but at least symbolically to make some kind of show that actually if the state will not enforce the law, that they will do it themselves. I'm glad to say that there are some successes in gradually stopping the feed-in tariffs for the new hydropower. In Montenegro, they already stopped, and also in the Federation of Bosnia-Herzegovina, they said that from New Year this year they would not grant any more feed-in tariffs for the plants. And also at the moment, Serbia and Republika Srpska in Bosnia and Herzegovina are in the process of changing their legislation. So the situation, hopefully in the coming years, will improve with respect to the small hydropower plants. Of course, the ones which are built, but hopefully the incentive to build new ones will slow down. And then we will be left still with the question of large hydropower, which I mean over 10 megawatts as we would define it in this region. In the Western Balkans so far, as I said, all of the countries have some hydropower in their electricity mix, but most of the plants are rather old. And actually, Albania is the only country that has managed to build some larger hydropower plants in recent years. But all of the other countries are still trying. And a lot of these projects have actually been around for decades. The plans, they exist since 1950s, 60s, 70s, but still they are not built yet. It's a little bit more difficult, I think, to fight against large hydro in the region because at least it does provide some significant proportion of the electricity. And so it's not so easy to find arguments as against the small hydropower ones. People are used to hydropower. They don't really oppose it. But on the other hand, awareness about nature protection is slowly growing. And we are also very much trying to show that hydropower is vulnerable to climate change in the region. If there was a project which was planned 30 years ago, it might not be relevant today anymore. It might not be economically feasible. Can we have the next slide?
I could speed up a little bit.
Sure, yeah. So you can see here the example of Montenegro. This is electricity production at the beginning, at the bottom from hydropower. You can see how much it's varying from year to year according to the hydrology. So just adding more hydro doesn't seem like a very smart move if we're talking about energy security. So just to conclude, I think this is where the next big fight is going to be on larger hydropower plants. Gradually, the European public banks like the EBRD and the EIB, they are becoming a bit more sensitized to the problem of hydropower in the region, but there is more and more interest from Chinese, Turkish, and other companies and banks who not only they don't really care about environmental standards, but they don't even care that much about the feasibility of the projects either. So this will be the main challenge for us coming forward.
Ja, vielen Dank, Pippa, für den freundlichen Beitrag.
Yeah, thank you very much, Pippa, for your contribution. We can see that a lot is happening right there in the West Balkan countries. It's great to see that there's a lot of resistance. However, is there a chance that the tourism industry will participate in this resistance, or are they not really joining the movement?
Enterprises, are they also joining the fight against the hydropower?
To a small extent, yeah, it depends on the location. Some of the rivers are now becoming quite active for rafting and canoeing, for example. And I think this will become more and more visible on the fight on the larger hydropower plant. The last slide, for example, was the River Drina, and there are a lot of rafting camps, a lot of tourism, but the fight there hasn't really begun yet, because actually there's a dam that's planned there since the 1970s, and now it's again planned, but I think no one really believes it will happen. So I think this is a fight which there is potential a lot for those engaged in the tourism sector to join, but it hasn't really happened so far.
Ja, vielen Dank. Ich sehe jetzt keine direkten Fragen.
Okay, so I don't see any more questions. That's why I would like to hand over the mic to Olsimika from Eco Albania.
Die Viosa jetzt zu einem Wildfluss-Nationalpark erklärt werden soll. Und da hören wir uns gleich nochmal ein paar Worte von Olsi an. Bitte?
This is about turning Viosa into a wild river national park, and we will listen to Olsi.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for the invitation. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, perfect.
Okay, all right. So yeah, I'm very honored to be invited in this workshop. Actually, you already get the glimpse of the Viosa River, but I will try to make a really short presentation regarding what is the Viosa River and what does the river represent. So just for the ones that they don't have a clue where Viosa is located, it is somewhere in this red dot here. So it's on the southern Balkans and also on the southern Albania. Just to have a little view how Viosa looks like. Viosa is actually one of the largest rivers in Albania. It's a transboundary river shared between Albania and Greece. It is actually one of the last free-flowing rivers, so there is no obstacle or human permanent intervention of infrastructure on the river, meaning like dams or other human-made infrastructures. And there is a continuity of different habitats and landscapes along the river. So I'll try to make a little journey on the river. This is the upper part and how it looks like. And when the river is on its middle section, it gets like even up to 3 kilometers wide, the riverbed, and it creates these mixture or magnificent mixture of the different mosaics. And actually, this is one of the areas which is currently under threat by the hydropower. So talking about the habitats and landscape, this is not the only importance of the river, but there is a significant importance also on the scientific perspective, just to know that almost 80% of already known Albanian biodiversity is also present in the Viosa Valley or the Viosa Basin. And the recent research work shows that the Viosa is of even not only national importance in terms of biodiversity, but also of world or global importance. So just to let you know that only in the last 5 years of not thorough research, I must say, there have been discovered 2 new species for science, and one of them is the stonefly, which is also named after the Viosa. It is called Isoperla viosa. A part of these natural values, landscape values, and also scientific values, there are other multidimensional values of the Viosa, which is a nice mixture of tradition and of conservation of the best traditions, actually, in Albania, as well as historical and even archaeological sites. So this is the basin. I will try to give an example of what and where are located the threats. The biggest threat, apart of other not so major threats, is the hydropower development. So there are already some small dams existing on the Viosa tributaries. There are some other which are under construction, but at the time being are more or less frozen, so there is no real construction going on the ground. But there are many plants on the tributaries, making the whole this river system, which looks like a tree with the main trunk piece, Viosa, and the rest are the tributaries, making or putting this in a big threat. Viosa is unique not only for the longitudinal connectivity or continuity as a free-flowing river on the river main course, but also for the tributaries, which actually creating a unique river ecosystem which functions on a natural basis. But on top of this, there are also plans for construction of 8 large dams along the Viosa. One of them is, if you may see, this yellow part here is a long story of the Kalivaj hydropower plant, which is a story started in 1997 and it continues still. So it can be considered under construction, but in reality, the construction works are on hold since 2002. So we are talking roughly about almost 40 hydropower on the Viosa Basin, only in the Albanian territory, but there are in additional some other small-scale hydro on the Greek territory, which makes the number even bigger, up to 45. So what we have done in the frame of the campaign, we have tried to inform them to share the information with the local communities that are living along the rivers. So we have had a long tour and we have been present in almost every village and every town in the Viosa, sharing the same concerns with them and protesting together with them and helping and supporting them, being their voice in the media in the capital, but also being their voice in the Brussels, like here, there is a special hearing or session in the European Parliament about the Balkan rivers. We have used different lobbying tools, starting from the low level on the municipal levels up to Albanian parliament. For instance, this is one of the former members of the parliament in a nice and colorful event that we have organized in Tirana. So we called it the Viosa Day. So the lady has been once the former Minister for Foreign Affairs in Albania, has been one of the strongest voices in the parliament defending the Viosa case. Part of that, we have tried to raise awareness through other artistic events, like this one here. It is a big concert that we organized in Tirana, where there were more than 3,000 people attending to this concert. And the main message is something that is of real importance, is most not prek Viosa, which it means don't touch the Viosa or hands off Viosa. What we've done else is, or in addition, is to involve science. So it's not the usual science-speaking language is just publications of findings of scientific papers. But what is really unique regarding the Viosa campaign is that the science has been spoken out loud and has been sent complaints and even petitions to the Albanian decision makers to give them the opportunity to first study and research what does exist in the Viosa on scientific importance, and then to go for building hydropower. And here we are in a extremely unusual press conference, actually, of the scientists from Viosa. It is just on the one of the islands of the Viosa in its middle section. So far, we have tried to raise awareness that the dams, and especially the locations where the dams are planned, are not wise and cannot stand because it can contribute to a loss situation. Loss for the local communities that have to be resettled, loss for the biodiversity and nature, and loss also on mid-term of economical benefits because of the unstudied and unmanagement of the water flow regime, but most importantly of the sediment regime. But for sure, we have gone over this to elaborate it further and to make it clear that the campaign who is saying no to dams in the Viosa is actually not the antidote for the proclamation of the national park. Not at all. The Viosa deserves to be proclaimed as a national park because that is the only one category who secures the conservation in long terms of the natural integrity and of the natural processes along the Viosa. But at the same time, having these national park on its entire length, including some of the tributaries, is practically one of the unique national parks in Europe. So it's practically establishing the first wild river national park in Europe. And we have already delivered this proposal even officially in the national authority, relevant authority, which is the Ministry for Tourism and Environment. And we have actually just launched the campaign Viosa National Park now, using also the general elections which are at the brink for Albania, and it will be held on 25th of April. So that was my presentation. I was trying to be short and to give you just a glimpse of what is happening. And we need your support, all of your support, to this Viosa National Park initiative. So you can share it on your Facebook or whatever, social media, and you can also influence your politicians, your decision makers. The Viosa is not only of local importance, it's not only of Albanian importance, but it's the last free-flowing river in Europe, and it's the European nature heritage. So we all have to fight for it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, also. I think Entschuldigung, ich muss auf Deutsch weitersprechen. Vielen Dank, also sehr.
Thank you very much, Olsi. This was quite impressive images. This is also interesting to hear about biodiversity and the fact that taking away these spaces both puts biodiversity and spaces for people in danger. We are more than willing to support you in any way we can. Tobias Schäfer and I are doing film screenings where we will definitely show you a film. And this event today, together with Euronature, Euronatur, has been prepared in cooperation. And we support your campaign for the blue heart of Europe. So we are very curious to hear about your coming plans. It's a good inspiration to have this national park project. In the chat I wrote, there was a plan about making the Viosa UNESCO World Heritage Site. Can you tell us anything about these plans, making it a UNESCO site?
Thanks. Well, there are many things that we have planned and we will try to implement. So the video is just part of this Viosa National Park Now campaign, but part of this there will be an action on 4 different cities in Europe, actually, including Tirana. So then there will be big letters, there will be a message, Viosa National Park Now, as well in Brussels, in Berlin, in Paris, and also in Tirana. And we will use it for media work as well, but also for influencing the EU decision makers in this. As far as Slovenia is under the process of negotiation or integration on the EU, they might have a strong influence on the Albanian decision makers. A part of this UNESCO heritage is it's kind of on our plans, but it's something that it can add on top of the Viosa National Park. The brand is the free-flowing or the Wild River National Park. And above these, you can add Biosphere Reserve or you can add any other layers. But UNESCO heritage is something that can fit easily to the Viosa as soon as I already mentioned that there are already even UNESCO heritage sites in the Viosa basin. So Gjirokastra town is part of these UNESCO heritage sites. But there are also other historical and archaeological sites that can be very appropriate to be included in this. So we are thinking actually, or are assessing the possibility to include the basin, as a UNESCO heritage site. But it's on our very early phase of the planning.
Now I would like to suggest that we close this part of the seminar and switch to the focus on Germany. We are welcoming Olaf Lindner from the German Angling Association. He will be able to talk about small hydropower and the situation in Germany. Thank you very much, Michael. My name is Olaf Lindner. I'm an official member of the German Angling Association in Berlin. We are one of the largest nature conservation associations. We focus on rivers and their inhabitants, especially on fish. Michael already mentioned it. We want to focus on Germany now. I am a fly fisher, an enthusiastic fly fisher. And I've seen a lot of amazing rivers, and we also want to compare the situation in Germany with that in the Balkans. What is the situation in Germany? Let's look at figures and challenges. The presentation will be in English, or the presentation itself is in English, but I will present in German. I hope you can all see. It's titled Hydropower in Germany. And let's look at facts and figures. First of all, you can see a map. And if you look at this, also in comparison with what we saw earlier, you can see that there's a huge difference between the north and the south, which is due to the fact that in the south of Germany, we have the Alps nearby. So there's much more energetic water available in the south. But also we can see from the many red dots that Germany already has a lot of hydropower built. So we hope that the Balkans won't go down that road. If we look at this, we have about 7,600 hydropower plants, 7,400 of which belong to so-called small-scale hydropower, which in Germany is defined as a hydropower plant with a capacity of less than 1 megawatt. This is different in many other countries. In other countries, also power plants of less than 10 megawatts are considered to be small scale. But in Germany, this is the threshold. And the majority of them are small scale, which is part of our problem. Pippa already mentioned it. Small hydro, large impact. This is our observation as well. Now, hydropower was introduced in Germany and is also being defended based on the argument of being climate friendly. But if you look at the fact that hydropower only accounts of 0.4% of gross electricity generation in Germany, this is a bit odd. Only 0.4%. So their yield is disproportionately small when in comparison to the ecological benefits. There were huge incentives that were introduced by means of the Renewable Energy Act. And there were all kinds of business incentives for investors. They were granted so-called feed-in tariffs. They were promised money, and many entrepreneurs were lured into investing in small hydropower due to these tax incentives. But we also see that energetically usable water is decreasing due to climate change. Summers are becoming warmer, rainfall is decreasing, and residual water is diminishing. That means that power plants are switched off during hot summers. So there's not so much residual potential if there's no rain for these power plants. Another important fact that you should know is that energy production from hydropower, despite these subsidies, in total has not increased for many years. Despite many power plants being commissioned in past years, energy production has not increased. So these are the basic facts, an impression of the situation. I'm active with the Angling Association. We focus on fish. So what are the ramifications of small hydropower for fish? This is a list from Baden-Württemberg, from the federal state of Baden-Württemberg in the southwest, which illustrates the ramifications. The green segment accounts for the portion of fish that are not threatened. So 2/3 of all species are threatened. 10% are already extinct. Well, we're still looking for them, but they basically could be considered as extinct. So we have sturgeon and salmon, and also smaller fish. We have many threatened species, eels, for example, endangered species or severely endangered species. And the tendency is rather negative. We see that many fish go down this scale towards extinction. Let's take a look at the problems. We have similar pictures here. The top picture, what you can see here are shredded eels from Norway. So my metaphor is, if you take a banana and put it through a turbine, it will probably not survive this. And the same holds true for these fish. They are being shredded when they pass hydropower turbines, and eels have already ended up on the list of fish species that are threatened by extinction. Here at the bottom we have a water bird which got stuck in a grill. So other aquatic species are affected as well. We see that there are efforts to make hydropower more environmentally friendly, but most of hydropower plants don't live up to these requirements. There are a few good developments in this area, but they only take away the worst impact of these power plants. So only a small portion of hydropower plants are equipped with state-of-the-art fish protection. Often it would be too expensive, or there's no room for these retrofittings. This presents a huge problem. And this relates to both protecting fish, so keeping them from ending up in the turbines, but also allowing fish to pass in order to ensure procreation. We have an amazing water frame directive in Europe. When it was created in 2000, we were all happy about it because it included things such as deterioration prohibition, but now less than 9% of all German rivers are in good ecological conditions, so it failed its purpose. Fish cannot reach their spawning grounds because all kinds of power plants and barrages are blocking their way. In our point of view, hydropower causes more damage than other renewable energies. Wind turbines have other problems, of course, but they also provide more power generation in comparison to hydropower plants. So there are often many better renewable energy options as opposed to hydropower. Another point we're wondering about, if you destroy the environment, you should be liability. So we suppose that those who use water as a free good should be liable, should be responsible, should be, at least the damages that are created should, so it should be something that operators can be made liable for. We are working on improving the situation so that profits cannot be generated without being liable. Of course, there are regulations in this regard in Germany, but they are not always effective in our point of view. The last point, somebody asked in the chat whether the relevant directive doesn't apply. Well, new construction projects are repeatedly being put into practice. At the River Iller, for example. So arguments include benefits for the common interest or for the public interest, but in many cases, the biodiversity directive or water protection regulations don't protect us from these new hydropower plants. So if you ask how we can ever reach our water protection requirements in Germany, we don't see any efforts in Germany to seriously deal with the problem, because if you did take it seriously, we would need to make a common effort in Europe. But this is we don't identify the political will at the moment to go down that road, unfortunately. Thank you for your attention. Thanks, Olaf Lindner. I'm very pleased to see that the German Angling Association is dealing with this topic. We don't have a lot of time left, so unfortunately we can't have many questions. Sebastian Schönauer wanted to say a few words about the topic. But thanks for showing us what this problem with small-scale hydropower is about. So I might add something for a few minutes. Both what was presented on an international and a national level about hydropower being built or not being built. We've heard a lot of arguments. We've seen a lot of pictures, especially by Tobias. Of course, it's nice to see fish swimming again, but it's a long and rocky road to get there. Both in Europe and internationally, good efforts have been made in terms of campaigns. But the problem is elsewhere, namely, how do we, as those who want to protect water bodies, how do we get these bits of information not only to decision makers, but how do we get them at the same table in order to be able to discuss political and environmental contexts? So far, this has not been successful, and Olaf Lindner already mentioned it. Regulations are not enough, but still I would like to say there is a guideline that includes permeability for fish, but also for sediments. And we need to keep going down that road. If there's no permeability in rivers, we definitely need to literally bore and drill until the dams are removed, at least in order to create a possibility for fish to migrate during the night. Second issue is that, especially when it comes to climate change, we've learned about residual water. This is something that politicians are interested in learning more about. Ms. Karenz, the Green Environmental Minister in Hesse, issued a decree about residual water that says how much water a river has to contain in order for fish to be able to live in it. And it showed us that we hit a sore spot. Many people got active and reacted and said, no, if we have to give away even more water, we won't be able to do our small-scale hydropower. And operators of hydropower plants haven't understood where we stand. Every time I talk about this, everybody is supposed to say that there's supposed to be an outcry in Germany, and there's supposed to be a reaction in all 16 federal states. There's supposed to be a political action, political campaign to have this decree on residual water, because as long as it has not been introduced, both EU legislation but also German water legislations are infringed upon. This is the point that we need to address, also due to the fact that people now have an image in their heads. Fish that are no longer in water. So what's supposed to happen in the summer, in the next dry summer? So I think the demolition or beginning renaturation, this is something that should start now. We shouldn't go back in time.